Judas complains, and they're suddenly thinking, oh, he's right. Hey, we're wasting money. We could be look at all the people we could help. And they're about doing things. And so their motivations are kind of less about God or Jesus and more about maybe the cause or the purposes of things are going on. So oftentimes, their response is much more of small groups or outreach or the homeless or things like that. Their actions have a taste of basically kind of a self-motivation. Whatever interests them is what would drive them. So we look at the stories and we see here, these are the disciples who, they're like their campaign manager. And when the little children come on here, they say, hey, get out of here. We're doing important things, little children. Move away. Don't bother Jesus. They're like Peter, who's sitting there thinking, Jesus needs a bodyguard. And then the Garden of Gethsemane, I'm the one who's going to stop this thing. That's my part I'll play. They're like James and John, who are negotiating who's going to be on the right, who's going to be on the left of Jesus. I mean, a power play, and everybody else is complaining, but they're going to be the first to come up with the idea. They want to play, position. There's an agenda that's kind of playing through their head, and it's probably more of a place of naiveness. They don't understand it, but it's self-seeking or self-motivating nonetheless. And so the question would be, does that one describe you more when you think of worship? It's a natural place, like I said, for us all, even to move from the self-seeking to the self-motivating, is that because now I see God's need, I want to be a part of what He's doing, I follow Him, but I lift myself to a level of, but it's really important. God can't do this without me. God needs me to be a part of this. I'm the one who has to come. I'm the one who wakes up at 3:30 thinking, what have I done wrong? Because I'm that important that this church's success or failure is hinged on me. And we can move that into that place of being more of a self-motivated, looking at that. We care, if we're not careful, worship becomes more of a love of action as opposed to an act of love. We measure based on the results and the actions and the to-dos, and we become more legalistic in the way we see things. We compare ourselves with others, and we judge others based on what we like or don't like. We define our worship by the reactions of other people. Is it good or bad? How do the other people feel about it? And we want to be able to kind of define it in that terms. Because we lift ourselves to kind of we wouldn't call ourselves equal. That would be a little presumptuous. But to a level of importance as if the success or failure is kind of hinged on us. And so we worship from that kind of a place. And that's kind of where the disciples were in this. And so their reaction was much more mission-wise, saying, hey, look at the things that we should do, as opposed to just about Jesus. And of course, God, that's not where God wants worship to be. But it's a place we go, but He wants us to be able to move past that. And so the third type that we see here then is kind of a self-aware worshiper. This worshiper, I would say, is a person who's met Jesus in a personal way. They have a genuine desire to remove themselves out of the picture. They've certainly experienced the need for Christ in their life and what the power of what Christ has done in their life, and they're definitely drawn to that. And so they're trying to become selfless in their life and let Christ fill their life. They do long to know Christ in a personal way, and so they pursue in that way. In this particular story, I kind of related it to both Lazarus and Simon the leper. Both of these men were brought back from the dead. Lazarus was a physical death, that Jesus rose him from the dead. Simon the leper, given the fact that if he was a leper, based on his title, it was a social death, economic death. A leper was banned from the city. They wouldn't throw a party, and if they did, no one would come. They were banned from the city. They were not allowed by law to ever come in or have contact or even be within distance of anybody, the people. So it was an isolated, lonely way to die, because it was a waiting to die kind of a thing. And Jesus Christ must have healed him in that experience, and so he became a follower of Christ. So he had an experience as well in that that was going on there that drew him into no question, probably a love for Christ because of what he had done in their life. But you kind of want, in this story, you want to have kind of an extra verse. You wish there was a verse in there that maybe said something like, and Lazarus jumped up and said, "Leave her alone." Or Simon the leper said, "I get it. I understand what she's doing. Back off." I mean, Jesus Christ is really important to her, to defend her in some way. And then Jesus says something. But that didn't happen. They sat in silence, to whatever extent that we might know in this story. And again, in fairness, I don't know what they did in others, but maybe that's part of the message, because we don't hear stories about Lazarus or Simon doing amazing things for Jesus. We just hear about two people who experienced the healing of Jesus, who followed Jesus, and for them, it's become a very personal experience. And maybe that's you. Certainly, I think it's far more of who we are oftentimes in our worship, because we do come together and we worship. We're here because of a personal experience with Christ and we worship Him. But we tend to think that, but I don't want to impose on you my worship. I don't want to be so blatant in the way that I worship that you are uncomfortable. So I'm going to be a little more reserved, and I'll just, I kind of want to lift my hands, but I'm not going to, because other people might feel weird about it. And, we're aware of our own, but yet we're also kind of sensitively aware of others, and we try to be able to define worship from a very personal place. I can worship Him at home and not go to church with others, because it's a personal thing. And we see it that way. But by doing that, though, others aren't drawn into that experience. We have experiences that could be used in a powerful way. We tend to not want to tell our story. We don't want to share it. We don't want to make ourselves sound better than someone else. And as a result, other people haven't heard this experience, and they're not drawn in by what God has done in your life. And so that's a self-aware kind of a worshiper. It's a good place, but it's not as deep as you can go. And the fourth one is the one we're really focusing on today when we come in. It's what I describe as a self-sacrificing worshiper. And of course, Mary is the one who fits this description. She's all in. We see it in her actions. We see it in the way that she's moved into the story and what she's done. I mean, first of all, even a woman moving into the story and taking kind of a forefront place isn't really a great thing. But she's sacrificing her reputation in her worship with Jesus. She's bold to be able to do that. She risks being known as the woman that wasted perfume, and irresponsible in many ways. In the book of John, he describes that she actually used her hair to wipe the perfume. And if you know from 1 Corinthians 11:15 says that if a woman has long hair, it is her glory. So the very thing of this woman that men would or people would attribute to her honor, her glory, she used to wipe the feet of Jesus. Her greatest glory, is at the lowest point of where Jesus is, you might say. And she's willing to do that. She's willing to have people think whatever they want to think, because all she wants to do is just worship Jesus. She's willing to sacrifice security. I mean, this perfume, John says, is a year's wages. In Tracy standards today, that's about $58,000. I don't know how many of you have something in your home that you'd say that, $58,000, I could give that. I mean, the largest check I've ever seen donated to Heartland throughout the years is $50,000 at one time, but it was from a guy that was probably a week's wages at most. I mean, he even said, "I got more money than I know what to spend." So it wasn't really like this woman. She's willing. Probably it was a situation. Mary was Martha, the sister to Martha and Lazarus, and so it probably was their family security. I mean, they didn't have a bank. So you bought things that were of value, and they would go up in value. So it was probably their security. And she just says, I'm giving it to Jesus. So she's willing to risk that and giving it all to Jesus and let Him have it. She didn't care. She had only one desire in mind, and that's to be at Jesus' presence. That's all she really cared about. If you look at the story of Mary, you're to go back. There's 3 times that she's mentioned in the gospel, Mary. Interestingly, all 3 times she's described as being at Jesus' feet. This story, of course, is the one where she comes to worship Him and give it. The other one is at the story of Mary and Martha at Lazarus, when Martha's in the kitchen cooking. And where's Mary? Mary's at the feet of Jesus, hearing Him teach, wanting to take in what Jesus has to say. The third one is when Lazarus died. And Jesus comes and someone says, "Hey Mary, Jesus wants to see you." She runs off like crazy. And she goes and it says, and she falls at Jesus' feet in her sorrow. All 3 stories describe how the people around don't understand her. I don't get this, Mary. She doesn't care. All she cares about is being this abandonment, this extravagant desire to be in the presence of Jesus. She doesn't try to figure out some kind of a plan. She doesn't have kind of a self-motivated agenda or self-seeking. She doesn't have even a self-awareness of what are other people thinking. She is just abandonment in the presence of Jesus. Extravagance in the presence of Jesus. Knowing that no matter my circumstance, whether I'm in sorrow or sadness, whether I'm in a funk, whether I'm feeling, inadequate, whatever it is, that my response is one thing: get myself in the presence of Jesus. And that's sacrificial worship. That's the kind of worship that goes to the deepest level, where there's abandonment and extravagance. I mean, Romans 12, 1 through 2 says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God." This is true worship. To offer yourself in every way possible. Worshiper that's willing and eager to lay themselves on the line. Paul described it in Philippians 3:8 in the terms of, he says, everything is rubbish compared to the surpassing greatness of knowing Christ. And Paul would describe the way to know Christ is to be in His presence in all situations in life where you're seeking Him out and you're looking for Him in every way possible. That's what matters. Not anything else. Not titles, not status, not money, not retirement, not job security, not social networks, not friends. None of that stuff matters in comparison to being at the feet of Jesus. That's the deepest kind of worship the Bible calls us to. Christ calls us to. And Jesus here in this passage, the depth of that worship, He says, is a beautiful thing. We should all want that. To strive for that. I look at that story and I'm just realizing that I can come here 1,000 times and I can worship, and believe me, I do. I mean, I've said it before. I mean, I love Sunday mornings seeing the people come. Not because I'm counting heads, although we try to know if you came or not. It's because of that relationship piece of seeing, I love to see you. Seeing faces I haven't seen in a while. It's a care and community. It'd be like family. I mean, I was thinking about it. I thought, my grandkids are over with my daughter this week, and looking forward to seeing them. And I'm thinking, it's the same feeling. I'm hoping someone is there that I want to see that I haven't seen. Wishing I had more time to say, how are they doing? What's going on? That's community. That's the desire to come together. That's in the context of this kind of a worship, a place where you experience the kind of joy that Jesus offers when we're in His presence. It's being in His presence when we do that, when we're a part of that. And the passage here, it helps us see that that's the type of worship that gets noticed. Not the act of singing or raising hands or whatever. That's people don't understand. It's that genuine, extravagant, abandoned, sacrificial desire to go where Jesus is that turn heads. And Jesus says here, when that happens, people will remember. He makes sure people remember it. So, you can say, well, yeah, it would be, we could feed the point Jesus is making is that, yeah, you can go ahead and provide some meals to the homeless, and that was great, and it's done. Or by her sheer desire to give to Christ and to be a part of that He will, in His power, like the feeding of the 5,000, He will produce that far greater than anything that you could do if you went out on your own and did these things. He's the source of our power. He's the one that we should go to in all situations, whether our funk or whatever it is, and knowing that the answer is not to run off and do a bunch of things, but the answer is to come back to a place of being in Christ's presence and worshiping Him and allowing Him to draw us out of that. He becomes the aroma, we looked at that previously, that people notice and smell.